Baker Show.
I am indeed your host for the next 2 hours. This is Kev Baker, and of course, this is time for the Kev Baker Show right here on the best network in the world, and that is, of course, TFRlive.com, Truth Frequency Radio, where we give you protection from deception. It's going to be a good one tonight. It really, really is. Some cracking conversation before we went on air there with my two equal co-hosts, or equal hosts, I don't know what you call it these days, where you have to be very inclusive. But I've got Jimmy Jeans here, as usual, and I'll come to Jimmy in just a moment, because for the first time in too long, really, I've got Scotty Lopez. I rescued him from Joe Joseph's dungeon. Yes, Joe keeps him in a dungeon so he can pull him out on a Tuesday and a Thursday night right after the Kev Baker Show. And I hope you haven't got Jockholm syndrome, Scotty, and I want to welcome you back to the Kev Baker Show. You get some sanity here for 2 hours instead of that madness with Joe, man. And I just hope Joe's listening, because obviously that's all said for his benefit. How you doing, dude?
Joe treats me very nice.
Does he? I hope so, because if not, I have to have a word with him, dude. I really will. But I was listening to you boys last night. Jimmy jumped on to the Freedom Link after the Kev Baker Show. I managed to hear a bit of that show. Great that we've got Joe back on the network, but great to hear you hooking up with Scotty, hooking up with Jimmy and Joe on there as well, Scott. And I believe a special shout out tonight to your mum, because it's a very special day for her today. She's completed yet another revolution around the sun, and let's hope this next journey around the sun is equally as good, if not better. So a big shout out to Scotty's mum, Tana. And is she having a good day?
She's having an excellent day. We decided to order pizza so she didn't have to cook, and we just told her to sit back, relax, and for her that's probably the best birthday present of all.
I think you're probably right, dude, because sometimes we take our mums or our partners for granted. And sitting there, she's probably looking at me, throwing daggers at me. But I don't thank her often enough for what she does for me. And sometimes we kind of take people for granted. So it's nice that your mum can take the day off today, enjoy some pizza pie, and, just enjoy her birthday, man.
Yes, exactly. And
that's how old she is, because obviously that's quite rude when it comes to ladies. So hopefully she's 20, feeling 21 and young again with all of this free time she's got in her hands today.
She definitely has the spirit of a very young person. So really cool.
The older I get, I still seem to feel like I'm 21 in my head. Man, the spacesuit, the body, it certainly doesn't feel like it's 21 anymore. But it's true what they say.
Exactly.
You're only as old as the person you feel. Boom, boom. And with that said, let me go to the man in the hat, Jimmy Jeans. He's on form today. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good day today. Good day. I found that I'm... now, this isn't a time slip. It's a side effect of these wacky tablets. But it's almost as if I can be sitting for what feels like 10 minutes. I'll look at the clock and maybe an hour's gone by. So I find this quite amusing. It's been a bit of a bizarre day. But Jimmy, you've been kind of saying to me, there might be a new guest we could line up for the show sometime soon. And it's a direction I really want to take the show in. We're going to try and start bringing onto the show people that are innovators, inventors, and bringing forth new technology out of Silicon Valley, right? So 2019, it's not as if we're going to totally revamp the show, but we're going to see a lot more people that are really helping to make changes in the world, aren't we? Are we still on air? Well, I think we're still on air. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, I don't know what happened to Jimmy there. He just seems to have absolutely left me hanging and looking stupid, but we'll see what happens.
I think he slipped into the vortex.
I think so. And before we get started tonight, I want to give a really big shout out to Lila and Ivana down in London. Now, I really, really appreciate everything you're doing to help the show. And they're both on Patreon. And a big shout out to them tonight. Big shout out to Nancy. Big shout out to everyone else over there on Patreon supporting the show, all of the subscribers to TFR through the Kev Baker Show page. Seriously, couldn't be doing this without all of you. So much love and respect from me and the Baker clan. So with that said, I want to launch into a couple of stories to start off with tonight, guys. I'll come to you, Scott, because I don't even know. I think Jimmy's dropped off the call now, actually. And you know, here we are on the build-up to Christmas. And people are going out and they're doing their shopping, rightly so. Everyone's got that festive spirit about them. And, you know, I was mentioning how we take people for granted sometimes. And we even take our own situations for granted. And I was seeing a story today that really kind of hit home. And it says that the headline here from The Guardian is at least 320,000 people in Britain are homeless right now. That's 320,000 people. Now, for me personally, I think that is utterly shocking and it's unacceptable, especially at a time when all of this Brexit is still spinning along in the background. I say in the background, it's the only thing most people in Britain are talking about. And this Brexit, I mean, we're going to have to basically pay billions in what they're calling a divorce settlement just to get out of this EU that none of us voted to be in the first place. Now, those billions that we're going to waste getting out of the EU, along with all of the other money that we waste on absolutely pointless projects that we send abroad to some countries that don't even need it in the first place. You know, Scott, they say charity begins at home, right? And I think in this day and age, 2019, we're looking at the prospect of man very shortly going and occupying and colonizing places like Moon and Mars. And yet we still can't build houses for all of the people that are in our own damn countries, man. I find that utterly unacceptable, dude. And as somebody who has been homeless in the past, albeit for a very short time, you know, it just reminds me of what it was like. And I spare a thought for anyone, absolutely anyone in that situation right now. And with Christmas coming up, you know, it can be easy just to pass people in the street and not even see them. And it's just, you know, I don't know what that says about most of humanity, because I know a lot of people do help the homeless, but there's still far too many that don't, in my opinion, Scott. But what say you to the homeless problem when your government, my government, all governments around the world where there's a homeless crisis, you know, it's just not good enough, man. Not in this day and age. Not in my opinion, anyway.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's ridiculous for this to even be occurring in a first world nation. You know, Britain's a first world nation. We're a first world nation. I just looked up the homeless numbers here in the United States, at least the most recent ones while you were talking there. And, you know, we here in the United States, we have almost 554,000 people that are homeless in the United States right now.
Tell you what, that's actually, when you think in comparison, the population of the UK, which I'll dig up in a moment, compared to what, 350 million over there in the US? I was actually expecting the numbers to be higher over there. So the fact that they're
but the thing is that it's clustered in certain states. Okay, so it's not equally spread out amongst the entire country. And it's very interesting because the states that have the highest homeless populations are California, Oregon, New York, and Hawaii, of all places.
Hawaii, really?
Mm-hmm.
I would never, ever have thought that, ever.
Yeah, there's a really big homeless problem in Hawaii. And you see a lot of this. You remember that show? Was it Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, dude.
Yeah, you know, when you think of Hawaii, you think of tropical paradise and beaches and all that stuff. But they actually have a really bad homelessness problem there. And they actually have a really bad drug problem there as far as like methamphetamine and stuff. So it may look picturesque on the surface, but there's a really kind of a dark underbelly to a lot of these places.
Absolutely. And our population, I just dug it up there, Scott, 66 million people, and that was in 2017. And it says we've got this 320,000 this year, according to Shelter. And what it says is this amounts to a year after year increase of 13,000 people, a 4% rise. And this is despite the government pledging to tackle the crisis. Yet another empty promise that hasn't been fulfilled. And the estimate suggests that nationally, 1 in 200 people are homeless. Now, at the same time as this is going on, I've got another story here. And I want to get your thoughts on this, because I'm not saying that this accounts for the majority of the numbers that I said there. However, there does seem to be an increasing number, and I shouldn't be surprised, I suppose, of people who are actually scamming it. They're not homeless at all, but they're pretending to be. They're sitting out as if they're beggars, and they're actually taking money off people who think they're helping genuine homeless people. And it says here, and we've got to keep an open mind, because this is coming from the police, so it's probably coming from the government, and they're probably wanting to water down some of the numbers that are genuinely homeless. I'm open to that. It could be totally, fake numbers, but it says police in one of England's smallest cities have urged people not to give beggars their money, insisting none of them are genuinely homeless. It says officers in Ely, Cambridgeshire, said those who claimed to be sleeping rough were actually fraudsters who were making, quote, substantial amounts of money. Now, they warned that the kind-hearted and well-meaning people were in danger of being misled, and said if they wanted to offer beggars something, it should be food or a hot drink rather than cash. Now, I think that's another great way to help people as well. And a few years back, it was myself and a couple of other guys went out, and we had a bunch of sandwiches and hot drinks and stuff like that. And we went round some of the homeless in Glasgow. We done it with the anonymous masks on, Scotty. And, I felt really good going and helping people like that. But what do you think about this claim that some people may well be on the scam? Because I'm sure it's happening. I'm sure it is. I'm not sure if every single person in Ely, Cambridgeshire is at it. But it's really, that's got to be the lowest of the low, right? Trying to make money by pretending you're homeless.
Yeah, and that is a problem. Now, not everybody who is, on the street asking for money is a scamster. So I don't think, there is going to be a few people out there trying to exploit the situation. You're right. They are the lowest of the low to sit there and act like they're homeless and just so that they can get money from people. And it's ridiculous. We've seen some of them, people doing that here in Topeka, and you can tell they're not homeless. They haven't been sleeping rough, and there are people who do that, but I don't think that they should use that as an excuse for telling people not to go and help people if they actually look like they're in need and actually are homeless. I don't think that they should discourage people from that. It all comes down to using your intuition and using your judgment and looking at the person and saying, this person really looks like that they need help, so I'm going to help them. Just use common sense, basically. But yeah, there are people that do that, and yeah, they are the lowest of the low. They're scum for doing that, because then it casts doubt on people that actually do need the help.
Absolutely. And we've got Armand in the chat room. I think Armand stays in Brighton. I could be wrong. He's talking about how there's 150 homeless down there, and there's people that are out there helping the people on the streets. They've got a bus. We've got something like a bus up here in Glasgow as well that goes about, and it's like a soup kitchen, stuff like that. So there is people, there are groups that do genuinely go out there and help the homeless. I see somebody talking about how in California, despite the fact that even the wealthy are voting to give more in special taxes, the money itself, it's not making its way to where it's needed.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And the thing with California is they are the fifth largest economy in the world. Think about that. They're just a state of the United States, and they have the fifth largest economy in the world. Yet they have the lowest quality of life in the United States. They did that rating. They did the research, and California has the lowest quality of life, but yet they're the fifth largest economy in the world. How does that work out? And that obviously means that the money that they're pulling in and the money that they're making is not making its way to the people to help them in any way. And it's going into the pockets of the elites that run that state.
That is criminal. There's no other word for it. And over here in the UK, Jimmy, something else that I find criminal. And we've got you back now, and I'll get your thoughts on this just after I kind of throw this out there. I think I seen Armand mentioning this as well. And Armand, thank you for reminding me of this. And I'm sure when I talk about it, people will remember these stories. But here in the UK, it's barbaric. There's things called anti-sleeping devices. And you get them on park benches. You get them on the pavements outside big buildings that belong to the big corporations or the councils or places where they don't want this homeless problem to be seen. Out of sight, out of mind. And again, in 2019, I think this is just too much. And Jimmy, it's like metal studs, like metal spikes in doorways and things like that. And then you've got people as well, because all of us here listening to this show, I like to think that we're all kind-hearted and we're all trying to work for a better world and to lift up humanity, to help people that need help. I was watching a video on one of the tabloid sites here in the UK just the other day, and there's a crowd of people, maybe 3 or 4 people filming as there's a tent in a doorway with 2 homeless people in it, and some absolute asshat runs at it and does a flying karate kick into the actual tent and into the homeless people. And they're all laughing and joking and thinking it's fun and posting it on Snapchat and Twitter and stuff like this. That for me, I've got no words to even describe that without starting to smash things. But Jimmy, you're in California. So what's it like there, man? And what do you think to the whole kind of homeless issue, especially when you see governments and states in the US throwing money at projects and programs? That's absolute nonsense, dude.
Well, I mean, I've had quite a bit of experience with the homeless in California. Number one, in my early 20s, I was homeless myself, and not because I couldn't work, but more because I was trying not to be found by some people. And so that was the only way that I could do that. And so what ends up happening is you're in this downward spiral because you get to the point where you need to take a shower and you can't, and you got to make a phone call and you can't. And, it's hard to get a job when you're dirty. There's a lot of things in California that are, literally Santa Cruz, California. It's funny that you're bringing this up because this is a big major league place where homeless people come. And there is literally right now a giant camp set up over here down by, there's a homeless center. And there's a whole park over there where everyone was living in the woods down by the river. And so the cops and everybody went over there and made everybody get out, and they tore all their stuff up. And so everybody basically moved over into this other area, and there's a giant camp. And it's funny because I was there today and I was looking at it and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'm going to go over there and talk to some people And now that you're bringing this up, tomorrow I'm gonna go over there and talk to him. I'm gonna talk to some people. I'm gonna get some video, audio on video, and then we will bring some of that to the table tomorrow. But listen, if you're gonna be a bum, definitely be a beach bum. That's what this guy told me when I lived down in Venice, California. On the boardwalk, 1 million people a day walk by on the weekends, literally. And so if you're a bum down there, or you're somebody who's panhandling or doing something, the chances of you making enough money to survive for the rest of the week are pretty high. So there's quite a few homeless people living down there. A lot of them have made the decision to just get out of the system. They don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to walk on the treadmills anymore and pull the weight. They just want to be left alone, and man, I'm telling you, there are so many homeless people here in California. It's not even funny. And people are like all concerned about, other people coming over the border. It's like, there's no place for anybody to live unless you can afford to live around here. If you're not making a substantial amount of money, it's literally impossible to live here. The only way you could live here where I live is if you're under, say in your 20s, is if you're going to school and your parents are paying for you to live somewhere. And that drives all the prices of all the houses up around here. And so what I've found in the homelessness thing, Kev, is that everybody's about 3 weeks away from ending up out in the streets. There by the grace of God go I every time I see a homeless person. Now, I can't give to everybody. I don't have anything to give sometimes. I don't have money to give, but maybe I have a kind word.
Exactly. Even acknowledging somebody means a whole lot more than somebody who hasn't been homeless can appreciate, because sometimes it feels like you're invisible. And sometimes you want to be invisible because of the things that Jimmy was saying. You don't look the best. You haven't had a wash in a few days. You're still people, folks. Still people just like us. And, very rarely do people set out and plan to be homeless. It happens. And it can happen to anyone. It can happen overnight. Just a series of unfortunate events. And it could be you. That's the thing that really, really gets me. And, we take everything, absolutely everything for granted, Scott. We truly, truly do, man. And, just with Christmas coming up, and I seen this headline today, personally, I don't think enough shows in the alternative media, and definitely not any in the real mainstream media, whatever you want to call them, I just don't think they address this problem often enough. And I'm not saying that this show's got any kind of millions of listeners behind it that's going to make a difference, but surely we can at least raise awareness. And I know maybe a lot of these people won't ever hear us talking about their plight, but we're not forgetting about them, or I certainly am anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it can happen to anyone. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, all it takes is one, really bad incident that, where you can't afford maybe to pay do your house payment or something like that. You know what I mean? You lose your job. And next thing you know, you're one of these people. You're part of the statistic of homeless people. And that's why, you should never judge a homeless person. A lot of people, look at a homeless person and they assume, okay, well, that dude's a drug addict and, he's a piece of crap or something like that. And that's why he's homeless. No, he could have been some dude that, had a nice job or something like that. And, it can be taken away that quick, and people can't really afford to be saving money up for emergency situations and stuff. It just, people don't have that kind of cash. And so when something really bad does happen, they end up on the street, and it's really unfortunate, man. So yeah, it can be anybody listening right now. It don't take much, and you can be one of these people out on the street.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, will come to you after the break. But yeah, I know this might be a bit kind of downbeat, bit depressing to start off a show, but that's no reason not to address the problem. And I just wish, the government here in the UK, governments around the world, they start caring about the people who put them there and the people that they're meant to be representing, instead of lining their own pockets with our money. We'll be back after these short messages. Jimmy will pick it up after the break, and we've got a lot more stuff. Don't worry, folks. Good stuff on the way right here on KBS on TFRlive.com.
Times are changing. The circus of politics, healthcare's low standards and high prices, and let's not forget food quality. What to do? Arm yourself with Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. In a world of chemical imbalance and poor air and water quality, it's time you make a move. Log on to GetTheTea.com and stock up on organic non-GMO supplements. Don't forget the tea. Cleansing your body never felt so good. And we have a brand new tea called Takedown Tea, which helps support healthy glucose. All natural body support so you can be at your best, naturally. All you have to do is log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. We're not a fad that comes and goes. We are the real deal. Join us and armor up. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Changing America's health one tea bag at a time. Times are changing. The circus of politics.
There we go. We are back. We are live. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight from around the world. I'm Kev Baker, and I've got two cool cats with me tonight. I've got Scotty Lopez from Freaky Friday, from the Freedom Link, and from the Kev Baker Show. He gets around our Scotty, and that's because he knows stuff, as does Jimmy Jeans. He's got his own show. He's a co-host here on KBS. He goes on Joe's. He goes on Freaky Friday. This man, he goes everywhere. Why? Because he has a passion for speaking about all of these issues that we talk about. And I like to get into
the man of many hats.
Oh, he is the man of many hats. And we all know I like the quantum woo. I like the technology. But, this is something that is close to my heart because I've been there. I've spoke about that before. And at the weekend, I was out with Anne and my son. And I've seen the Salvation Army. And they're out with their buckets collecting and they're singing their carols. And that always reminds me, because if it wasn't for the Salvation Army, and I know they take some grief over here in the UK from time to time, I wouldn't have had a roof over my head, and I certainly wouldn't have got into a flat, and I wouldn't be where I am today with Anne and the wee man. And recently, when all that stuff with Google went on, maybe that was in the back of the mind, and maybe that's why I was so stressed out. And Jimmy's seen the state I was in when all of that, when the rug got pulled out from under me, because the minute something like that happens, when you've been on rock bottom and had nothing before, maybe when you're staring that in the face again, maybe that is why I was panicking so much. And like I say, this can happen to absolutely anyone. And we're going to stay on it briefly because it is a really important topic. It truly is. And Jimmy, you were even talking about maybe going and speaking to some people that are in this situation in the next couple of days. And it's going to be really interesting to hear just how they ended up homeless. And I never really appreciated the fact that, over here in Scotland, you move into the winter and it's absolutely Baltic out there. It's freezing. We're going to be talking about that later in the show. And that's why I say nobody really plans to be homeless. But I never thought about places like California and in particular Hawaii. And when it's warmer climates, it's maybe not quite such an issue, the sleeping out in the winter and things like that. Not that I'm saying it's a good thing and encouraging people to do it or anything like that, but maybe I was a bit naive thinking that some people don't choose to do this. But Jimmy, what say you to this, man? Because I know you were wanting to jump in, but the break came up.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on in America right now. And one of the things that's going on is people are losing their homes. A lot of people are opting out of the whole home environment, and they're doing something that's what's called boondocking. And boondocking is where they take these vans, they get these, like equipment vans, like you would have for, like, say, a plumbing or electrical outfit. And they're turning the inside of these vans into these mini RVs. And because they're white vans, they blend in anywhere. So you could just basically pull over and park and camp. And so people are like opting out. They're saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to pay $2,000, because a lot of people work off the internet. A lot of people work off their computer. So they're saying, hey, I don't want to pay $2,000 a month of my salary for some thing that I'm never going to own. I'm just going to go ahead and throw a bunch of money in these vans. I mean, they're spending some money on it, but you can build them yourself. And so I looked into that, and I was going to build one of those vans. But my plans fell through. But in the course of that, I found these things. They're called temporary autonomous zones. And what these are these cities that are in these areas that have no governance whatsoever. So you can literally move into one of these areas and live there on the land for free. And there's a bunch of other people there doing the same thing, and it's like a Mad Max sort of environment. And there's a place in California, it's called the Pads, and it's right down in the desert, and it's where these old military buildings used to be, and the structures got torn down, but the concrete pads are still there, and so all these people have moved in there. And they live there, and it's like it's like a Mad Max scene. It's like that video California from Dr. Dre and Tupac. Okay, and here's the funny thing: there's a BBC documentary called American Nomads, and in that documentary, this guy from the BBC goes over to this place, and when he pulls in, somebody hands him this flyer, and they're having a talent show that night, which is so funny because it's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. There's this autonomous zone, and they're having a talent show, and they showed the talent show, and it was actually pretty good. I mean, it kind of looks like what it would look like in the event that you had some dystopic future where people are just kind of living. You know what I'm saying? It's really a trip. A lot of people are choosing to be homeless because they just can't do it anymore, Kev. They can't afford to feed their kids. I mean, there's some people living in school buses and stuff, you know.
Yeah, man, it's a hell of a problem. It really, really is. And I want to read out a comment from the chat room, if I may. It's from Goldie Girl. And it says, I've been living in a hotel for 3 years. Surgeries, illness, not eligible for disability, no employment, underemployment, and I've had to become quite familiar with the homeless population in my area. And from going to food pantries and homeless shelters, all of the people still respond to a loving, caring smile and genuine love and concern. No matter what the issue is, be it mental, drugs, abuse, at the end of the day, people are still human and respond to love. I thank God for the Kev Baker Show, keeping my mind off the sadness of my situation and helping me make sense of the world and have hope for my future. See, that's what I'm talking about, folks. We don't have a big audience here in comparison to some of these bigger shows, you know. Yet here's somebody who's living through what we're talking about and basically confirming what we were saying about just contact, just speaking to these people. A smile costs us nothing. You know, these are fellow humans, and we should never, ever forget that. And I see it all the time, you know, in the streets, people just walking over them, you know, hardly even seeing them. And I'm glad we touched on this tonight, guys. I really, really am, because like I say, or we were saying during the break, it's not the happiest of topics, but these things have to be spoken about, because not speaking about it would be the same as ignoring these people that have kind of landed on hard times. So, Scotty, Jimmy, I don't know if you've got any final thoughts on this before we move into some other topics. Jimmy, I've seen the mute button. Oh, Scotty, on you go then, Jimmy, after that.
Well, you know, I was just going to say, you know, it's very interesting how you see you know, these concentrations of homeless people, you know, in these certain states, and it's supposed to be these states that have that are high taxed and you know, I mean, look, California, New York, you know, there's a certain type of people that run those states, a certain political party, right? And they seem to push this whole thing of, they think that they're going to implement this socialist utopia in these states, right? Because if you look at the way the United States is set up, right? I mean, each state can kind of run their own experiment, right? And so you have California running their experiment. You have New York running their experiment. And obviously this experiment is not working, and it's only benefiting whoever is at the top of the pyramid. And so when you think you're going to get stuff for free and that the government is going to take care of you, just look at these states and look at all these homeless people and look at the quality of life in these states and ask yourself, are they really taking care of you? Are they really going to take care of you? And how is their little experiment working in these states? And then think of that, that they want to push that on a national level. And what would that do to the entire country if you were under something like that? So, it's just something to think about. And like I said, it still blows my mind. I can't emphasize that enough. California, 5th largest economy of the world, lowest quality of life in the United States.
Jimbo?
Yeah, well, a lot of it for sure is you see these gated communities, and the people behind those gates really don't care about what's going on outside those gates, and they got armed security guards to keep everybody out. So they're going to go ahead and do all that they can do to erode the confidence of, really, realistically, what homeless people in California are, they're people who just couldn't make it that next week. In other words, they've been on borrowed time because they always are borrowing next week to pay for this week. And eventually you get to a point where you can't do that anymore. And guess what? When you fall off, there's 10,000 other people right there who do have solid jobs, who do have money, who do have credit, who do roll into these places and take up all the space. There's no space. Literally in the Bay Area right now, and they're literally building these condos right up against the street, and they just keep building them, higher and higher. You go down these streets, and it's just a normal town, but it seems like you're in a city because you're in these canyons of these. I just don't understand. It just keeps, there's no room, and if you fall off just a little bit, you're out in the street. And that's why there's so many people in this. And then how do you?
It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate. Where you see the haves and the have-nots, and there's like no middle class almost anymore in these states, especially California. You're either making big bucks and you're involved in Silicon Valley, or you're involved in the movie industry or something like that, tech and all that, or you're just a lowly peon who's barely scraping by and like one paycheck away from being on the street. There's like no in between, absolutely no in between.
And after the wars, World War II, the GI Bill, a lot of people moved west, and there was a giant, huge middle class here in California. It was like the middle class haven in California. And
completely dry, man. There is no more middle class.
No, there isn't. And that's the model though, right?
The Hunger Games model, yep. Jimmy, right?
Right. Yeah. See, that's exactly the model. So what goes on in California is what the plan is, because the people, the same infrastructure that would be there would be in place if, say, Hillary Clinton was president. That same infrastructure is still governing what's going on in the state of California. So one of the things in the state of California to take a look at, just from an international and national perspective, is that California's infrastructure for delivering goods to people who have no jobs and who have no money. So if you have a family in California and you have kids, you can go right down to the thing, and today, right now, you could just decide today to go down there, and you could have food and money for your kids and probably even some money for hotel rooms. But see, in the future, when there is no work for people because AI and robotics takes over and does most of these jobs, there's going to have to be a way to support and have the things that we recognize as normal functioning, because more and more people are not going to have money. More and more people are going to end up in the street. More and more people's unemployment's going to run out. You know, and so you see all these people, and then on the other side of that coin, right, you see they just said that Jerry Brown wants to tax text messages in California to pay for phones for people who are homeless, right? So immediately,
I just saw that today. That is crazy, taxing texts.
I know. Well, see, listen, immediately what will happen is people will immediately jump on that and tear it apart. But exactly what we're talking about right now, which is, how do you get a job when you end up out on the street and you got no phone? I mean, even if you wanted to go down and get a construction job, how could you? If you don't have a phone, you can't. So we can't be hypocritical. You know, we can't sit back and choose. You know, I mean, we either got to be with it and we got to help each other, because there's no middle of the road, right? I mean, it's hard to be, you know, upset while they want to help people, but at the same time, you wonder, where's my tax money? I mean, why does it have to cost more and more and more and more? In other words, where's all the money going that we're paying
more and more, Jimmy, and we seem to see less and less and less for it.
Where does it go? It goes into a black hole, right? We pay $2 a gallon in tax here. I pay $6 a pack cigarette tax, right? I mean, at the amount of taxing that's going on anybody that smokes, instead of us hiding outside trying to smoke around the corner, we should have like a fat chair in every room to sit in and smoke in. Because think about that. Think about $6 a pack off every smoker. At least one pack a day, $6 a day, times how many smokers
Look at this,
per
Jimmy.
day.
So our man's right. It's the same here in Glasgow, I believe. It says the homeless in Brighton, and that's down on the south coast of England, can be arrested for begging, and talk about kicking a man or a woman while they're down. And if you can play a guitar, busk, that is the only way you can get money for free without any police hassle. I mean, that is absolutely shocking, the fact that these people can't even ask for anything.
Christopher Everard was saying that in France, that in these small villages all across France, there's homeless people. And he was saying that that's what a lot of what the Yellow Vest protests were about, was the fact that everyone's really upset about the homeless problem.
And I was seeing, some of the footage of some of these rural areas, Jimmy, and he's right, because all these places are boarded up. Like I said to you yesterday, it looked like the set for The Walking Dead, some of these places that they were showing you. And you mentioned the yellow vests there. And these yellow vest protests are spreading. Now, some might see that as a good thing. I kind of keep an open mind on it, because this is where movements can get co-opted. We've seen Occupy. I think when it very first started, it was trying to be genuine, but the minute it starts spreading around other cities, that's when you get the agents moving in, and they might seem to have the best of intentions. And in Scotland this weekend, people are being urged to go onto the streets of Edinburgh and Glasgow. Now, I wouldn't tell anybody what to do, but if you are going to take part in this, if you're listening to this show, I would imagine it's for all the genuine reasons. But at the same time, don't be naive and keep a very, very close eye on the people around you, who's organising it, what they're telling you to do, because the minute these things start to spread far and wide, that's when they infiltrate it. And I may, depending on how I feel on Saturday, I may go down and stream some of these protests. I'll see what's happening. Not going to guarantee it yet, folks, but we'll see what happens, because if it does happen over here, I obviously want to see how it goes. I want to document what's happening, but I don't want to sound defeatist, because we need change. We need that evolution that Jimmy's been talking about, not revolution, because that takes you right back to where you started. However, got to be very, very careful when these things start to spread. And Jimmy, the fact that we have seen such an uprising over in France, and it, to a certain extent, it's been successful so far, you just know that the players and the movers and the shakers out there, they'll be making tactics and making plans right now to do everything they can to scupper that this kind of growing dissent, the winter of discontent that is upon us. And I know you won't see me as being negative. I know you'll know where I'm coming from. But I don't mean to sound defeatist, folks. Just be very, very careful. Maybe they are just as genuine as the protests we've got going on over in France. I don't know. But Jimmy, what do you think of that, man?
No, I think anytime anything like this starts up, I mean, you can almost, I mean, it's just like you see these movements over here in America, and half the time the people that start them are plants to begin with. You know, so there's no way to knowing what the ultimate goal is. As long as the people are getting something out of it for the meantime, then I'm happy with it. You know, and I just wanted to point out that, you know, that your show here and shows on the network and shows like these, you know, truth type shows. See, a lot of us spend a lot of time and energy researching and doing all this stuff to find out how, you know, what's going on. The thing is like, if we spent just as much energy just doing some organic stuff in our own hometown with our abilities to research, our abilities to organize, our abilities to use the internet, and we could actually make a difference instead of having these, you know, these bombastic deliveries of how heinous everything is and there's nothing you can do about it. But see, everybody's got us focusing on the things we can't do anything about. But what we should be focusing on, in my opinion, is, you know, the things we can do something about, you know, which is, you know, turn inward and get local and, you know, do what you can around your neighborhood. Be smart like you are on the internet, finding out about the New World Order. And be smart like that in your own hometown, and, you know, figure out how to help some old people.
What I used to say, his mantra, think global, act local. And I think that really does apply to what Jimmy's saying here and to what we've been covering for the first hour of the show tonight. And I just noticed Scott had dropped in something from the chat room into the chat here. I'm going to read that out. It comes from Epic Journey, man. Always really on point. It's back to California again, and we're going to be talking about things in California and Silicon Valley after the break. This is California has the worst care in the country for the mentally handicapped and the psychiatrically disabled. They just dump them on the street after their 3-day hold when they go for, quote, observation. Now, if they commit a crime, the jails boot them for their psychosis, and if they go to a mental health facility, they get booted for being violent or a criminal. Again, the ultimate catch-22 situation in California. And you're there, ground zero, California, Jimmy. That's pretty shocking, man.
It is shocking, but what I'm telling you is that if you wanna look off into the future, into the gray future of what it's gonna be like to just be a drone in a society that you just sit there and get on the treadmill and crank it out. Maze Runner. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I mean,
it's really programming us, Jimmy. We talk about programming a lot, and you look at some of these kind of dystopic, futuristic movies. You know, it's as if they're almost showing us what's to come, and that's not to sound, you know, pessimistic or to cause fear or anything like that. But with what we're talking about tonight, and over here in the UK, if homelessness goes up 4% every year, you can see it's an increasing problem. And you guys have been so bang on tonight, and you've given me a lot to think about. You certainly taught me a lot as well. And, you know, America, I didn't realise it was, you know, the way it is over there. And I started off the show by saying to Scott, it's actually really good that there's only like just over 500,000 compared to the population in the UK, and we've got 300,000. But you can see how this really can rapidly head towards that Hunger Games scenario. And I think it was Scott and you as well, Jimmy, mentioned the fact that the middle class, it's basically disappearing. And when it does disappear, it's like we keep saying, the haves and the have-nots. And that's when you get to that Hunger Games scenario, James.
Right. And the thing about it is that is, look, I'm old enough to remember when I was a boy, I remember all about the Soviet Union and how it was over there. And I remember there was this, they did this documentary where they went over and they went to a restaurant, and the waiters and waitresses there weren't interested in even helping anybody. And it was because they make the same amount of money whether they run over there and get you a cup of coffee or they don't. So they're standing over there having a conversation. They don't care whether your coffee cup's empty. And that's the gray socialist future that people want to just launch themselves into because they want to just go ahead and give up and get what they get from the state and forget about it. I'm telling you, the younger generation right now is willing to give up their freedom for some money every month and not to have to pay back that student loan that they got. And you know, they've been building these FEMA camps and people have been speculating about these, you know, people's heads getting chopped off in these gas chambers and all that. But no, I mean, realistically, when the middle class disappears, you got a bunch of people with their hands out. And when your hand is out, you will do whatever the master says to get that piece of rice. And that
hey,
you know.
And at that point, everyone will be equally
That's right. Exactly right. Equally poor and completely and utterly identified at that point, because in order to be in the system and get your ration, you're going to need to have your facial ID, your biometrics, your blood type, your DNA, your genes, everything.
You see, that's why I laugh. You know, Theresa May, she survived somehow tonight. And the alternative to her is a Labour government with Jeremy Corbyn, who wants to bring socialism right across Europe. You know, what we're talking about here tonight, that's what he's kind of envisaging for our future. And this is the future we're moving into. And we're moving towards the break. Now, I hope you've had lots to think about here in the first half tonight. And I hope you spare a thought for anyone out there in the cold over in the UK tonight, wherever country you're in. Remember just how lucky some of us are, not to take everything for granted. We'll be back after the break. Lots more news to come. Get into some woo as well for all of you. This has been brilliant so far. I thank Jimmy and Scott for really